there.
You're welcome.
And a big shout out to Chef Joey, man. He is like the bomb. All right,
So,
man. You definitely was something to come in to.
all right. So, besides political activism, Mariah, what else do you do? If you want to tell me.
Well, I do so many things. Let's see. I do legal research. So what I usually do is I go into, and it's only really if somebody brings it to my attention. So I don't just go looking for it. But I go into court records and I actually go through court records to see how a judge is conducting his courtroom, if he's following the rules of procedure, if he's fair, if he's impartial, how he treats pro se litigants. That's a person who, defends himself. And I go through the records to see what they're doing. And when I get through, I compile a report, all from the records from their courtrooms, and I send the reports out to the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, to the Attorney General's office, to the Federal Trade Commission, to the Auditor's office, depending on what I find. So I'll send it out to the bar, to the Supreme Court, to make them aware of how these judges are conducting themselves in their courtrooms.
Okay. So how long you been doing that?
About 4 years now.
4 years. And what were you doing for?
I've been an activist. I was 17, but I've been a school teacher. I've been a legal assistant to Stanley Tolliver. I basically say this being in the city of Cleveland and knowing how my brother minister had been, but I was a pastor for 5 or 6 years.
Okay.
And so I have a really rich background in terms of, having my own business in Cleveland. I used to have a personal training and accounting and tax services. So I got a pretty good range of how to do stuff across the board.
Okay. So there's something that you've been starting.
I've been starting for 3 years.
Right. So. Okay. Term limits.
TERMLINITS.
Okay. Reason that you started the term limit thing for. Is it for the mayor or is it for city council or is it for both?
Both.
Okay.
Well, people have been disgusted with Cleveland for quite some time. And, advocates have for some time come together and they've had these meetings and we need to do this and do that, but nobody knows how to do it. Everybody says how to do this. And so there was a time when Stanley Tolliver was a voice and he would tell the advocates how to do things and, he's gone. So there's really no lawyers who have stepped up to the plate to help people and show people how to make changes within their government. And because nobody knows how to do it, people are more disgruntled and they're not coming out to vote. 265,000 people register to vote and you only have approximately 30,000 people participating, and the majority of those are absentee and provisional ballots.
Right.
So that's a huge problem when you're looking at the population of Cleveland and who's actually making choices for us. Right.
So you have somebody making a choice for you that you didn't want to make a choice, but because you didn't vote, you don't have the power anymore. Is that what you're correct?
I'm going to go one step further. I think it's abuse from our political system, because what they're doing is they're going into these senior citizen high rises. They're going into these elderly patient cares, and they're helping them make out these absentee ballots and provisional ballots. And these people are just signing their names to it, which is, I think, it's abuse. It's just totally abusive. But, when you look at the totality of Cleveland, we are suffering from domestic abuse here. They beat us up, and then they come in and knock a couple houses down, and they might fix the street, and then it's like a abusive husband. He comes in, he beats up his wife, and the next day he brings her flowers. That's what our politicians do to us. And so
isn't that happening all the way around the United States as well?
Exactly. And so what I'm doing is not just, it's not isolated. They're all over the country. People are starting to step up to the plate, and they're starting to do the exact same thing. They're starting to make changes within their local government through their city charters.
Right. So Nicole Wells, Shayla Davis, congratulations for running, Shayla. And Garfield, even though she didn't make it, is watching. Deontay James, Gail Sparks, congratulations to you. Also Shantae Love, Anthony Williams Sr. is watching on Facebook Live. Now, how long will the term limits be if this goes through, if you get enough signatures?
Oh, there's no if. We're going to do this.
Okay.
There's no if about it. So let's back up a little bit. About 3 years ago, we saw the direction of what where direction was going. Mm-hmm. And so myself and several other advocates got together and we were in a meeting and we met multiple times to come up with language. So the term limits was only the beginning of what we started. Mm-hmm. We started changing the Civilian Review Board to give it more power to deal with police officers, mm-hmm. and to change the collective bargaining agreement that we have with the Cleveland Police Department so that arbitration could be removed and police officers could be prosecuted as well as fired. So there's a gambit of what we started 3 years ago. And I'm not going to mention his name, even though he just won a judge seat. But he got people focused off of doing what we were doing, and they went to a recall of Frank. And so if you all remember, the recall of Frank failed very, very miserably because the lawyer that was advising them, who just won the judge seat for the municipal court, had not properly supervised the gathering of the signatures and making sure that each one of the petitions were signed appropriately. So they had like probably 60 signatures that were actually valid out of thousands of signatures that these advocates had went out. And and so when people ask me about, supporting him and voting for him, I'm like, no, because I can show you the text messages where he asked me to put them together because he didn't know how to put them together for the recall. And I said the recall was ridiculous because Frank could have been reelected back to the seat. So, right. According to the charter. So if you don't change the charter, which is our governing document, the loopholes that exist will continue to allow corruption to fester. And that's what's happening. We've got to change the charter.
Okay, so pretty much you change the charter, you change the term limit. So how long, now speaking of the term limits, how long will the term limits go for? Because Mayor Jackson is now serving his 4th term as mayor of Cleveland.
Well, okay, and so here's where it gets good. In 1930, the City of Cleveland Charter was drafted, and as you know, a draft is not the final document. It's right. Supposed to be built upon according to time and need. And so the only thing that changed in our charter, it strengthened the police department and it strengthened the elected officials, and the city residents' quality of life has diminished because no changes have been made to this charter which affect us, mm-hmm. And make us have a better quality of life in Cleveland. So in 1980, and I want everybody to kind of go back in your memories and think, who was the president of City Council in 1980?
George Forbes.
Okay. And who else was on council in 1980? Can you name at least 3 people that were on council in 1980?
I was just born in 1980. I don't know.
Right. Well, you got some 30-year people that's sitting on council right now. So y'all
wait a minute. One of them, we all know one of them was Polensek.
Yeah. Polensek. Keep going.
Kenneth Johnson.
Ken Johnson. Mm-hmm. Keep going.
And Lord Jesus, if wasn't Frank sitting on city council?
Right. Who else was on city council? Jeff Johnson.
Jeff Johnson.
So when you look at the totality of who's sitting on council in 1980, the charter was changed so that they would have indefinite terms and they could just keep running. So the issue I have with that is because when you go back and you look at history and you look at Carl Stokes and Louis Stokes and Stanley Tolliver and you look at even George Forbes, and you look at all these people, Earl Turner and mm-hmm. Judge Raymond Pianka, go down the list. You look at these people, they started here, but they didn't stay there. They spread out, they moved out into different areas so that they could open doors for African Americans in this community to be able to work in City Hall, to be able to work in the Justice Center and have fair opportunities. So the idea of serving on council was the beginning. It was not someplace you stayed forever, okay? And so what you see is in 1980, they flipped the switch and now they're there and we're stuck with them.
Right.
And I think that this election was a travesty. It was just absolutely disgraceful what we had to deal with through this election cycle. It happened because the people who are currently in power were in power 30 years ago. And they brag. I hear them say, I've been doing this for 30 years. There is no way I would look at the ward I live in and brag and say, I've been here for 30 years. This is what I finished.
What ward do you live in right now?
Ken Johnson.
Oh, you live in Ward 4.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
And let's understand something. The ward was Zach's ward. And then they redistricted, and it became Mamie's ward. Mm-hmm. And then it was redistricted, and then I got, Ken Johnson. Mm-hmm. Now, they say that, Zach has only been in office 16 years. No, he's been in office way more than 16 years. Right. Y'all can stop that nonsense, okay? Go back further. I totally remember Odelia bringing him to my house when I was younger and, introducing him to us. So, no, 16 years is a barefaced lie. For the ward he's in now, yes.
Right, because it was
redistricted. And so when you look at the wards that he served in, none of them benefited from him being a council person. Mamie Mitchell did not do a great job, and to her disadvantage, her health was part of it, which again leads to me the abuse of the city council, because they knew and they continued to allow her to keep running. The Democratic Party kept pushing her and putting her out there so that they would be able to keep control of politics in Cleveland, which I think is just...
Who was before her?
Because before
it was another lady. I can't remember her name, I believe.
In Mamie's ward, might have been Phyllis Cleveland.
No, it was someone else, because I believe Mamie was working with this council person.
I'm not sure. I just remember Odelia Robinson took Zach under her wing, and that's where he got the ward from, and then it transferred to Mamie. So I'm not really sure where Mamie was before, because my ward was like my little world, and so looking at the structure of the politics and the way that it's gone in Cleveland, there's a very strong clique with the Democratic Party. We see that, and at some point, the Democratic Party needs to be realistic. They have failed us. They have failed in terms of how the people they've chosen, they supported, and especially the African Americans, because they did not improve the quality of life for us as those were for us. Carl City Hall opened the doors so that women could have jobs in City Hall, and that other African Americans could be part of the movement, the going on that was happening in Cleveland. So when I look at these people that are currently in office, I can't say this any other way than they've prostituted the legacy of Stanley Tolliver. They prostituted the legacy of Stephanie and Carl and Lewis and Fannie and all of them that came before, because the whole point of them being in those seats was to make life quality in Cleveland for African Americans better, and they failed. They failed miserably. So that pushes us to 3 years ago when we sat at the table and we talked. And we came up with language, and we went to other cities to see what other cities were doing with term limits, and we started pulling language from different places, and we came up with all of these ideas and what we wanted to do. So we put the petitions together, and like I said, they dropped it because they ran to the recall, because that person is now that he failed them. He failed them miserably. So I took a hiatus for 3 years. I walked away from advocacy. I was like, this is just insane. I can't do this. And when this election cycle started and I saw the people coming forward, I tried to stay neutral, and I interviewed everyone that would allow me to interview them. Right. I did walk the ward. I think you saw the video.
Yes, I did.
I tried to do a get out the vote so people would know who the candidates were, would be able to ask the candidates questions from their phones, because now social media is everything to everyone. And as we got closer to the election and we went through the primary, I was absolutely thoroughly disgusted. I was like, this is unbelievable. We're stuck with Frank and Zach. Is this like a nightmare Twilight Zone?
I mean, would it be better if it was Frank and Jeff?
It wouldn't be better if it was any of them. Okay. I could have even handled Jeff. I could have handled the fact that Jeff would have made the primary. Would I have been happy with it? No. These were choices that you could be happy with. And so for me, when I was looking at, what was happening, I was like, we can't do this anymore. I'm sorry. We just cannot do this anymore. And I found myself arguing with people on Facebook about, well, he's better than him. And I'm like, hello, neither one of them are better. One is in charge of a ward. One is in charge of a city. The city looks like hell. The ward looks like hell. You're not going to tell me that one is better than the other. They're equally bad. I mean, it's just a bad choice.
I'm a Ward 10 resident.
So you got a new council person. So
okay.
No
now,
comment on that.
Yeah.
here's the problem I have with the people that are coming in. Unless we change the structure of the system, they're going to become as corrupt as the people that are currently in office. That's the bottom line.
And some of them are already corrupt.
Exactly.
Before they got there.
Exactly. So what we're doing is we're feeding more of our tax dollars to a corrupt system, and we're complaining about it, and we're not doing anything to change it. That is insane.
So
I can't do that.
So pretty much, you just want to change the charter because of
the insanity. The insanity. Let's not feed into the insanity anymore.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
And this is something that I'm looking into as well in regards to recalling a council person. Is that the same process? What you were referring to, how that was, still the way it was way back. Is that the same process?
Yes, the process is the same for recalling a council person. The problem that I think that anyone is going to have with this particular situation is that these people were voted in, and it's a legitimate seat. There's nothing that these people have done to this point where you can there's nothing that they've done that's illegal, nothing they've done immoral, that from the time they were elected, and they have not started serving. So, if they're doing something prior to that needs to be challenged,
right?
In the proper venue. And so, as I'm looking at this, and I'm talking to young people, and I'm talking to older people, and I'm listening to people on east side and west side, and my brain is like, those petitions are still sitting in your briefcase in the basement. And so it hurt my heart. It just hurt me to my heart because I'm hearing the same thing on east side and west side. So of course I pulled the petitions out. I started talking to people again, and I did get 4 other women. They're all from different backgrounds. We're all grandmothers, and Republican, Democrat, liberal, white, and African American. So east and west. So we decided we were going to work with this, and we all signed off the petition committee, and we've been circulating the petition. So to answer your question, Larry.
All right, cool.
Term limits.
All right, before we get to, let's take a break. We're going to come back to the term limits in a minute. We're going to take a break, pause for the cause for commercial break. This is Larry H. Gardner with Dolores Gray, Chef Joey, along with Mariah Crenshaw, who probably just chased every single politician away from this show. I'm kidding. I'm only kidding. I do that anyway. But here's the thing. But we're going to come back, and we're going to talk about those term limits. We're going to talk about changing the charter. We'll be right back. Peace.